"Oh, we turned in our own son." Charlie Kirk's killer's family finally breaks. That's the headline splashed across timelines right now, and fans are stunned. Imagine this: a picture-perfect family in small-town America. Sunday dinners, church gatherings, neighbors calling them the definition of traditional values. And then, boom, overnight, their world explodes into a nightmare that no one could have scripted. The whispers say their own flesh and blood is at the center of one of the most shocking stories to ever rock conservative politics. And what's even crazier? They didn't protect him. They didn't hide him. They allegedly turned him in. People are asking, what drives parents to make such a choice? How does a family go from standing together at community barbecues to standing on opposite sides of a police interrogation room? Behind closed doors, emotions ran high, voices were raised, and a family was left torn apart in ways outsiders can barely imagine. Neighbors say they heard shouting, relatives say they saw tears, and the community claims they witnessed a betrayal that still has them talking. Tonight we peel back the curtain on the chaos, the heartbreak, and the shocking decision that has the internet divided. They say every family has secrets, but nobody ever imagined a secret this dark could spill out from a home that looked so ordinary. A quiet street, trimmed lawns, a family that neighbors swore was the definition of American values. From Sunday service to community fundraisers, the Robinsons played their role perfectly. But what unfolded behind their front door would leave the entire nation gasping. On September 10th, whispers turned into screams as news broke that Charlie Kirk, one of the most polarizing conservative figures in America, had been gunned down in Utah. Within hours, shockwaves rattled every corner of social media. Names, rumors, and accusations flew faster than anyone could track. And then, like a thunderclap, one name surfaced that left jaws on the floor. Tyler Robinson. To most people in St. George, Tyler was just that quiet kid, the one who never made much noise, always polite, always blending into the background. But suddenly, headlines painted him as the villain at the center of a political storm. How could a boy raised in a family that proudly waved Republican banners end up accused of targeting a conservative icon? Fans were confused, critics were enraged, and the story was just beginning. Interview 326-337. The real drama, though, didn't explode in the headlines first. It erupted inside the Robinson household. Imagine the chaos of parents staring at photographs released by the FBI and realizing, in horror, that the young man in those images looked exactly like their son. Matt Robinson, a father known around town for his firm handshake and devotion to his church, reportedly went pale. His wife's voice cracked as she whispered, "It can't be him." But in that silence, the unspoken truth settled like smoke after a fire. Neighbors later claimed they could hear muffled voices rising inside the Robinson home. Some swore they caught glimpses of Matt.
Since I met him growing up, was always a kind, respectable, genuine kid. The kind of student that teachers liked, and all this, I feel like, not just to me, but everyone.
Caught glimpses of Matt pacing the living room, phone clutched tight in his hand, torn between dialing for help or protecting his own blood. Others recalled seeing Debbie Robinson, Tyler's grandmother, standing at the porch with tears streaming down her face, insisting to anyone who would listen that her grandson was innocent. But innocence wasn't what the evidence suggested. Investigators revealed that the night before, during a seemingly ordinary family dinner, Tyler's demeanor had cracked. What started as small talk about school and work spiraled when the conversation shifted to Charlie Kirk's upcoming appearance. Suddenly, Tyler's tone sharpened, his words laced with venom. He accused Kirk of spreading hate, of poisoning the minds of young Americans. His relatives, shocked by the outburst, tried to calm him down. But those who were there insist his eyes held a rage they had never seen before. Still, no one at that dinner table could have guessed how far that rage would go. Hours later, while his grandmother replayed his words in her head, Tyler allegedly slipped away, carrying with him a plan that would send shockwaves through the nation. So by the morning of September 10th, as Charlie Kirk prepared to take the stage, Tyler was already in place. Investigators later pieced together that he had meticulously scouted the venue, mapped escape routes, and chosen his vantage point with chilling precision. And when the shot rang out, Chaos consumed the crowd. Fans screamed, security scrambled, and America found itself staring at yet another act of political violence. While the nation demanded answers, the Robinson family faced their own nightmare. Matt confronted his son directly. According to insiders, the conversation was raw, heartbreaking, and filled with desperation. "Is this you?" Matt asked, pointing at the photo plastered across every news channel. "Tell me this isn't you." What came next would shatter him. Tyler didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. He admitted, and then muttered words no parent ever wants to hear. He would rather die than surrender. The air in that living room grew heavy. His mother sobbed quietly, begging him to think of the family, begging him to let them help. His grandmother shook her head violently, still clinging to denial, repeating, "No, no, no."
Process.
The way I've seen him, I've never seen really anybody dressed all in black with a mask on, and I thought,
No, it can't be true. The house felt like a stage set for a tragic play, every character drowning in their own conflicting emotions. This was no longer just a political story. It was a family torn apart. A father forced into an impossible choice: protect his son or protect society from what his son had become. It's the kind of moral dilemma that belongs in a movie, not in real life. Yet here they were, the Robinsons, trapped in a drama darker than anything.
You know what I know about Tyler is he was always very quiet. He was very smart. He had just a real mellow personality, never caused any problems. He, like I said, he was smart and he kept to himself, and I don't know who his friends were.
Anything Hollywood could script. What makes the moment even more haunting is the community backdrop. St. George isn't a place where scandals erupt overnight. It's a small town where everyone knows everyone, where neighbors trade pies at the holidays and gossip at the grocery store. Now those same neighbors were standing outside the Robinson home, watching police cars pull up, watching the once quiet house become the center of a national storm. And the whispers grew louder. Some accused the family of knowing all along. Others praised them for their courage, saying it takes unimaginable strength to do what they did next. Because in that moment, with the weight of the nation pressing down, Matt Robinson made a decision that would forever define his family's legacy. He reached out not to a lawyer, not to a political ally, but to a trusted family friend. A man who was both a youth pastor and a court officer. Someone who could bridge the gap between spiritual guidance and cold law enforcement. Together, they orchestrated the plan for Tyler to surrender. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A family rooted in conservative tradition, proud supporters of Trump, had raised a son who now stood accused of killing a conservative activist. The contradictions fueled endless debates online. Was this about politics? Or was this about something deeper? Something broken inside Tyler that no one had noticed? Social media erupted with theories. Some said Tyler had been brainwashed online, swallowed up by toxic communities that glorified violence. Others claimed his relationship with his partner, a transgender woman, had made Kirk's rhetoric feel personal, fueling a fire that burned out of control. Whatever the reason, one truth remained. The Robinson family was caught in the middle, forced to choose between loyalty and justice. As cameras swarmed their neighborhood, capturing every tear, every glance, every police cruiser pulling away, the Robinsons could only cling to each other. Yet even within those walls, unity was fractured. Debbie still cried out that her grandson couldn't possibly have done it. Matt, stoic but trembling, pressed his head into his hands. His wife whispered prayers that felt unanswered. And Tyler, silent now, sat in the corner like a ghost, knowing that every eye in the nation was on him. What unfolded in the next few hours would be remembered as one of the most extraordinary family betrayals in recent memory. Not because they wanted to, not because they stopped loving their son, but because they believed the truth mattered more. They turned him in. But even as law enforcement closed in, the questions only grew louder. How does a quiet boy raised in a conservative home turn into a political assassin? What signs did the family miss? And could anything have stopped the tragedy before it happened? The Robinsons, once the picture of stability, now stood at the center of America's most shocking drama, and the world was desperate for answers. Interview 10/39/11/01. The Robinsons thought turning their son in would bring clarity, maybe even relief. But instead, it pulled them deeper into a storm they couldn't escape. As Tyler sat quietly in the corner of the living room, the weight of his confession still lingering in the air, Matt Robinson knew the moment of truth had arrived. The father who had once taught his son to ride a bike, the man who had held his hand at church services, was now the same man who had to make the call that would shatter both of their lives. The phone was heavy in Matt's hand. Witnesses later said his fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from the crushing realization.
The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in.
Of what pressing those buttons meant. He wasn't just calling law enforcement. He was signing away his son's freedom, perhaps even his life. His wife's eyes pleaded with him not to do it, while Debbie shouted in denial, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But Matt, eyes burning with silent tears, whispered, "I can't let him destroy more lives, not after this." The conversation with the family friend, the youth pastor who also wore the uniform of a court officer, unfolded like something out of a tense thriller. "He's here with us," Matt admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He confessed, "I don't know what to do." On the other end of the line, the friend's voice was calm but firm. "Don't let him out of your sight. I'll handle this. We'll do it peacefully." Inside the Robinson house, emotions clashed like thunder. Debbie clung to Tyler, her hands shaking as she whispered, "You're not a killer, baby. You can't be." Tyler didn't answer. His silence was more terrifying than any outburst could have been. His mother broke down, sobbing into her hands, torn between protecting her child and acknowledging the horror of his actions. Meanwhile, outside, neighbors began to gather. Flashing lights painted the quiet suburban street in blue and red. Whispers darted between the crowd. "Is it true? Did their boy really do it? I saw him grow up. No way it's him. They turned him in? I could never." The once peaceful cul-de-sac had transformed into a stage for a national tragedy. Inside, Matt turned to his son one last time. "You need to do this," he said firmly, though his voice cracked under the weight of his words. "You need to face what you've done." Tyler's eyes flicked up, glassy but resolute. "I'll never survive prison," he muttered. "I'd rather end it myself." The room froze. Every breath caught in their throats. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. His mother rushed forward, clutching his hands. "Don't say that, please don't say that," she begged. "We can get through this somehow, but not if you give up." The youth pastor arrived just in time, stepping into the chaos with a calm presence that seemed to still the storm. "Tyler," he said softly, "you've made choices that can't be undone. But taking your life won't fix them. It'll only break your family more than they already are." For a long moment, no one knew if Tyler would listen, but then slowly he nodded. It wasn't agreement, not really. It was resignation. He was trapped in a reality of his own making, and there was no way out. As the sheriff's deputies prepared outside, the Robinson home became a battleground of conflicting emotions. His father stood tall, though his eyes betrayed him. His mother clutched a Bible, whispering prayers. His grandmother paced, muttering denials to herself. And Tyler, dressed in the same black clothes he had worn on that fateful night, sat on the edge of the couch like a figure carved from stone. When the door finally opened and officers stepped inside, the tension reached its breaking point. Neighbors peered through curtains, reporters pressed record on their cameras, and the Robinsons braced for the inevitable. "Tyler Robinson," the officer said, voice steady. "You're under arrest." Silence followed. No shouting, no struggle. Tyler simply raised his hands, his expression unreadable. But in that silence, the sound of hearts breaking filled the room. His mother collapsed into sobs. His grandmother screamed, "This isn't right!" And his father, standing rigid, whispered, "I'm sorry, son." As Tyler was led out in handcuffs, the flashes of cameras lit up the night. the image of a quiet, small-town boy transformed into the face of a political assassination suspect spread across every corner of the internet. Twitter feeds exploded, hashtags trended, and debates raged. Was he a monster, a victim of radicalization, or something in between? The community itself split in two. Some praised the Robinsons for their courage. "It takes real strength to do what they did," one neighbor said. "I don't know if I could have turned in my own child." Others, however, were less forgiving. "Blood is blood," another whispered. "No matter what he did, you protect your family. Always." The Robinsons became pariahs in their own hometown. Reporters camped outside their home, digging through their trash, chasing their relatives. Every move they made was dissected, every word twisted. While the nation debated Charlie Kirk's legacy and Tyler's motive, the Robinsons lived a quieter but equally devastating nightmare. Inside the family, cracks deepened. Debbie refused to speak to Matt for days, accusing him of betraying his own blood. "You handed him over like he was nothing," she spat, her voice laced with venom. Matt fired back, his own guilt twisting into anger. "I saved lives, Mom. Do you understand that? I saved lives." Their shouting matches became the soundtrack of the Robinson household, echoing through the walls for neighbors to hear. But the emotional wreckage wasn't limited to the family. Classmates who had once laughed with Tyler at lunch were suddenly on camera, describing him as quiet but smart, and insisting they never saw this coming. Former teachers shook their heads, baffled that the polite boy in the back row had turned into a headline. Social media filled with photos of Tyler smiling at family vacations, playing with his younger cousins, sitting with his arm around his grandmother. The contrast was unbearable. As investigators dug deeper, chilling details began to surface. Discord logs, text messages, even engravings on bullet casings, all painting a picture of a young man consumed by rage, radicalized by dark corners of the internet. Fans were horrified when they learned that the very bullet that ended Charlie Kirk's life bore the mocking words, "Hey fascist, catch." The discovery turned Tyler from a troubled young man into a symbol of a larger, more terrifying problem. Pundits filled the airwaves, arguing about online radicalization, the dangers of unchecked digital spaces, and the thin line between free speech and dangerous extremism. But through it all, one detail continued to capture attention more than any other: the Robinsons' decision to turn in their son. They weren't just grieving parents. They were heroes to some, traitors to others, and symbols of a moral conflict that cut deeper than politics. Their story was no longer private. It belonged to the nation now, dissected on talk shows, debated in comment sections, and whispered about in living rooms across America. And as Tyler sat in his jail cell, refusing to speak to investigators, his family grappled with a pain that only grew heavier with each passing day. They had done what they thought was right, but the question lingered, echoing in the silence of their once peaceful home. Had they saved lives? Or had they sacrificed their son to a system that would never forgive him? The Robinson family thought the worst was over once Tyler was in custody. But the real nightmare was only beginning. In the days that followed, their once quiet home turned into a circus of flashing cameras, satellite trucks, and reporters shouting questions they could barely process. Every knock on the door sent a jolt of panic through the house. Every phone call felt like another judgment from the outside world. Inside, the family's grief collided with rage. Matt sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wood grain like it might offer him answers. His wife wandered from room to room, praying out loud, her voice trembling with desperation. Debbie refused to leave the porch, repeating to anyone who would listen that her grandson couldn't have possibly done this. She told the mailman. She told neighbors. She even shouted it at a reporter's microphone. "He's innocent. I know him. He's innocent." But her words only fueled more gossip. The internet was merciless. Some praised the Robinsons for turning their son in, calling them brave, even heroic. Others tore them apart, accusing them of betrayal, of handing their own flesh and blood to the wolves. Hashtags like "your family traitors" and "justice" for Charlie trended side by side, each one pulling the family further into the court of public opinion. Then came the leaks. Investigators revealed that Tyler hadn't just acted on a sudden impulse. He had planned meticulously, down to the smallest detail. Discord messages showed him mapping out Kirk's tour stops, describing weapon placements, and even engraving chilling words on the bullets he used. Fans gasped when those engravings were revealed. Strange memes, anti-fascist slogans, and the final taunt, "Hey fascist, catch." It was bizarre, juvenile, and terrifying all at once. The revelations hit the Robinsons like fresh blows. Debbie clung to her belief, insisting it was fabricated. "He never even liked guns," she cried. But photos quickly surfaced online of Tyler posing with firearms, smiling awkwardly with friends. The evidence was undeniable, and the more the world saw, the more Debbie's denial seemed detached from reality. For Matt, the weight was unbearable. Neighbors reported hearing him shouting late at night, pounding the walls, muttering, "What did I miss? What did I miss?" Guilt ate at him. Had he been too busy with work? Too focused on politics himself to see his son slipping into darkness? His wife tried to comfort him, but her own grief made her fragile, her words thin and hollow. The community of St. George fractured under the pressure. In coffee shops and church pews, people whispered. Some said the Robinsons had done the right thing, that they'd shown moral courage. Others claimed they'd betrayed their roots, handing their son to a system that would likely seek the death penalty. The town that once saw them as a model family now treated them like outcasts, their every move dissected. Meanwhile, Tyler sat in his cell, silent and uncooperative. When investigators pressed him, he offered no explanations, no remorse. But his silence was its own kind of confession, and it tormented his parents. They wanted answers.
Was right.
What message would you send to Tyler if you could say anything to him right now?
What social media were you on and what friends were you hanging around? Because I feel you can't come up with that on your own. I feel like there's some hate in this world and it shouldn't be that way. And you need to...
Even if they couldn't face them, Matt visited once, sitting across the glass from his son, searching his eyes for the boy he used to know. "Why, Tyler?" he whispered. "Why would you do this?" Tyler just stared back, expression blank, as though the words had no meaning. The emotional toll fractured the family further. Arguments erupted daily. Debbie and Matt clashed constantly, her accusations of betrayal sparking shouting matches that echoed through the neighborhood. "You turned him in like a criminal," she screamed one evening, loud enough for neighbors to hear. "He is a criminal," Matt shot back, his voice breaking. "And if I hadn't done it, more people would be dead." Friends who once gathered around their dinner table now kept their distance. Phone calls went unanswered. Holiday invitations dried up. Even within the family, fractures spread like cracks in glass. Cousins avoided each other, siblings stopped speaking, and every attempt at reconciliation dissolved into bitterness. The Robinsons weren't just dealing with their son's crime. They were dealing with the death of the life they once knew. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a mausoleum of lost innocence. Every photo of Tyler on the wall became a reminder of the double life he had lived. Every chair at the table felt like an accusation. And still, the world wanted more. Reporters dug into Tyler's past, interviewing classmates, teachers, even ex-girlfriends. Stories surfaced of a boy who was quiet, polite, even kind. But behind the politeness, there were hints. Increasing isolation, hours spent online, strange comments that people dismissed at the time. One classmate recalled Tyler saying, "Some people deserve what's coming to them," but laughed it off, never imagining the darkness beneath the words. Interview 215222. 16. The contradictions baffled everyone. How could the same boy who volunteered at a food drive also engrave taunts on bullets meant for a political figure? How could a family that proudly supported conservative politics raise a son who turned that anger into violence? The questions had no answers, only echoes that grew louder with each passing day. The trial loomed ahead like a storm cloud, and the family knew their nightmare was far from over. Prosecutors promised to pursue the harshest penalties, painting Tyler as a domestic terrorist. Defense attorneys hinted at mental health struggles, online manipulation, and personal grievances that blurred the line between ideology and obsession. The media lapped it up, turning every hearing into a spectacle, every new detail into fuel for the fire. But for the Robinsons, the greatest drama wasn't in the courtroom, it was in their hearts. Could they ever forgive their son? Could they forgive themselves? Or were they destined to live as symbols of betrayal and tragedy, forever marked by the choice that had torn them apart? The house in St. George, once just another home on a quiet street, had become something else entirely. A monument to conflict, sacrifice, and unbearable loss. Neighbors drove by slowly, staring at the windows, whispering to each other about the family inside. Some pitied them, others despised them, and the Robinsons, trapped behind those walls, wondered if they would ever escape the shadow of what had happened. As the weeks passed, the strain showed on their faces. Dark circles under their eyes, weight lost from stress, hands trembling from exhaustion. Yet through it all, they endured, because no matter how broken, no matter how hated or admired, they had done what they believed was right. They had turned in their own son. And that decision, more than the crime itself, would define them forever. The days turned into weeks, and the Robinson family found themselves living in a reality they could barely recognize. Their once familiar routines were replaced by depositions, lawyer meetings, and endless calls from journalists desperate for a headline. Every step they took was scrutinized. Every word they spoke twisted into fuel for a story bigger than themselves. Matt bore the brunt of it. He was the man who had made the call, the father who had chosen society over blood. Some hailed him as courageous, but others branded him as cold-hearted. At church, people avoided his gaze. In the grocery store, whispers followed him down the aisles. One evening, as he loaded groceries into his truck, a stranger muttered, "Traitor," under their breath. Matt didn't react outwardly, but inside the wound cut deeper than any blade. His wife, meanwhile, was drowning in grief. She clutched family photos like life rafts, whispering prayers that seemed to go unanswered. Her tears stained the pages of her Bible, her voice hoarse from pleading for strength. She loved her son with every fiber of her being. Yet she couldn't ignore the horror of his choices. The contradiction gnawed at her day and night, leaving her caught in a purgatory of love and despair. Debbie, Tyler's grandmother, became the loudest voice in the storm. She refused to accept the reality painted by investigators. On camera, she wept openly, insisting Tyler had been framed, manipulated, pushed into something he didn't fully understand. Her words spread across social media, fueling conspiracy theories and giving ammunition to those who wanted to see Tyler as a victim rather than a villain. She became both a symbol of blind loyalty and a target for ridicule. Inside the jail, Tyler remained silent. His stillness became its own kind of statement. When his parents visited, he stared at them through the glass, expression blank. He didn't ask for forgiveness, nor did he offer explanations. Sometimes he muttered that he'd rather end it all than face what lay ahead, sending waves of panic through his family. Other times he sat like stone, letting the silence speak louder than any words could. As the trial date loomed closer, new revelations surfaced that only deepened the wound. Prosecutors revealed Tyler's online footprint, exposing the late-night chats, the dark forums, the memes twisted into weapons. The bullet engravings shocked the public, blending internet humor with deadly intent. It was bizarre, chilling and undeniable, chilling and undeniable. The courtroom became the next stage for this national drama. Every seat was filled, every camera rolling. On one side, prosecutors painted Tyler as a domestic terrorist, a calculated killer who planned every step with precision. On the other, defense attorneys tried to humanize him, arguing he had been swallowed by the toxic tide of online radicalization. The Robinson family sat caught in the middle, their faces a portrait of anguish. When Matt took the stand, his voice shook, but his resolve didn't. He described the night he confronted his son, the words that confirmed his worst nightmare, and the choice that tore him apart. "I loved him," Matt told the court, his eyes wet with tears. "But I couldn't let more lives be lost. I had to do what was right." Gasps rippled through the audience, some in awe of his courage, others in disbelief at his betrayal. The weight of that choice never left him. At night, he replayed Tyler's blank stare, his whispered threats of suicide. his mother's sobs. The house was quieter than ever, yet the silence screamed. The family was together, but they were fractured, each of them carrying scars that would never heal. The media frenzy only intensified. Talk shows debated whether the Robinsons were heroes or traitors. Commentators dissected every gesture, every tear, every contradiction. Fans of Charlie Kirk demanded the death penalty. Activists raised questions about radicalization and the role of online spaces in breeding violence. Through it all, the Robinsons stood exposed. Their private heartbreak turned into public theater. The trial dragged on, each day bringing new revelations. Each testimony another dagger to the family's fragile hearts. Friends who once knew Tyler described him as kind and respectful. Yet investigators laid out evidence of a meticulous plan fueled by hate. The contradiction left everyone reeling, unable to reconcile the boy they remembered with the man accused. And then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, the Robinson home sat in silence. Matt sat on the porch, staring at the horizon, his wife beside him, her hand clutching his butt, her eyes distant. Debbie's voice drifted from inside, still muttering denials. The weight of their choice pressed down on them like a stone they could never set aside. They had done what they believed was right. They had turned in their own son, but in doing so, they had lost him forever, not just to the justice system, but to the chasm between the boy he once was and the man he had become. The world would move on eventually, new headlines replacing the old, but for the Robinsons, the story would never end. Every holiday, every family gathering, every quiet night in their St. George home would be haunted by the memory of that night. The night a father looked into his son's eyes and asked the unthinkable question. The night a family chose justice over blood. The night their dream of being the perfect American family shattered forever. Their lives would never return to what they once were. They had become a symbol of conflict, of sacrifice, of unbearable choices. And as they looked ahead to the long road of trials, appeals, and endless judgment, one truth remained etched into their souls. They had chosen the world over their son, and the price of that decision would follow them until their last breath. The story of the Robinsons is not just about crime, not just about politics, but about the impossible choices that tear families apart. In one moment, they were the picture of small-town values, proud of their roots, united by tradition. In the next, they were standing at the center of America's most shocking betrayal. Parents who handed their own son to the very system that would try to destroy him. Fans are still divided. Some say they were brave, that they prevented more tragedy by stepping forward. Others claim they sold their bloodline, that no matter what, family comes first. The debate rages on across dinner tables, in church pews, and especially online. Did they choose justice? Or did they abandon their son when he needed them most? And what about Tyler? Was he the quiet boy who lost his way in the dark corners of the internet? Or was he a calculating villain hiding behind a mask of innocence? His silence leaves us with nothing but questions. Questions that cut deeper than any verdict ever could. The Robinsons may never find peace. Every glance in the grocery store, every headline that resurfaces, every whispered rumor is a reminder that their decision changed everything. They are no longer just a family. They are a symbol of loyalty tested, of justice demanded, and of the unbearable cost of doing what you believe is right. But now, it's your turn. What do you think? Were they heroes or traitors to their own blood? Should parents always protect their children no matter the crime? Or does justice come first? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your voice. Don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story shaking the culture. Your opinion matters, and trust us. This conversation is just getting started.